the Republicans say they want spending cuts and a return to fiscal sanity, and then bend over backwards to avoid the blame for shutting down the government, when they should have been standing up tall and proud, shoulders squared, taking credit for shutting down the government. But no, they gave in. It wasn't a compromise. It was a capitulation. It was a surrender. As Ayn Rand also famously said, a political battle is merely a skirmish fought with muskets. A philosophical battle is a nuclear war. And make no mistake, folks, we are in a philosophical battle right now. We need to send people to that godforsaken swamp inside the 495 Beltway who have the courage of their convictions to push the red button and engage in that nuclear philosophical battle.
All right, there we go. I am back live now, as you could probably tell from listening to that last 12 minutes or so of audio there. That was not live. That was actually from the debt ceiling debate in the summer of 2011. And the reason I brought that up is because here we are, again, at the end of 2012, a year and a half later, discussing the same things, aren't we? This notion of compromise. Well, we need to compromise because, hey, you know, Obama won and the Democrats control the Senate, so we have to, you know, we only control what was Boehner's line, 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government. Yes. Yeah, well, according to the Constitution, Speaker Boehner, let's see, Article 1, Section 7, Paragraph 1, all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, which I like to refer to as the House of Reprehensibles, which is very appropriate given the number 1 and 2 and 3 leadership in the House of Reprehensibles at this moment. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. So, all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. That means, quite simply, the House of Representatives has control of the purse strings of the federal government. Now, once again, as I said last year, from whence that last bit of audio came, during the debt ceiling debate, I played this little clip on one of my shows there, and I will play it again this time. This entire notion of, well, if we just raise the debt ceiling, if we just compromise on the Bush tax cuts, which are the status quo tax rates for the last decade plus, they're not tax cuts, they are the rates. The status quo rates. But nonetheless, we need to compromise on the debt ceiling. We need to compromise on these tax cuts. We need to compromise on this stuff because otherwise we might have a government shutdown.
Shut it down! Shut it down forever!
Now, that was a little clip from the movie Dark City, and a great movie, by the way. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. Very, very interesting concept. But the line, shut it down forever. The reason I play that is because if you remember, last summer during this whole debt ceiling debate, Barack Obama came out and said, oh, well, if the government shuts down, I can't guarantee Social Security checks will get sent out. Really? Really? Because that's kind of on autopilot through the bureaucracy, isn't it? Yes, yes it is. All of the entitlement programs. Yeah, the House and the Senate have to pass budgets or continuing resolutions to fund these programs. But as far as the payments themselves being sent out for the myriad of social programs, Section 8 housing, food stamps, welfare benefits, unemployment benefits, God only knows what else, the 80-some federal agencies that there are, or federal programs that there are, which oversee work training, for God's sakes, all of these things are on autopilot. The payments go out automatically. That food stamp card is loaded automatically at the first of the month with whatever amount you are supposed to be receiving. And we can debate the validity of the supposed to be at some future date. But the argument that was made at the time was that if the government were to shut down, then all of the non-essential services of the federal government, if they didn't reach some kind of a deal on the debt ceiling, then all of the non-essential services of the federal government would be shut down. The essential services would keep right on running. Now I ask you, where in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which lays out essentially the notion that the Congress will have the power to lay and collect taxes, and a limited number of things that the Congress will have the power to use that tax revenue for. Okay, a limited number of things that tax revenue can be used to pay for. Mostly providing for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. I've explained this before numerous times on these shows. Provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. That little line in Article 1, Section 8, at the very beginning of Article 1, Section 8, is a preamble, in fact, if not in nomenclature, to the rest of Article 1, Section 8. The common defense of the United States, for example, is defined by the enumerated powers contained in Article 1, Section 8. The general welfare of the United States, likewise, is defined, delineated, specifically in the rest of Article 1, Section 8. And that is all that the Congress of the United States is allowed to use those tax dollars for. Period. The Constitution makes it very, very clear. But there is nowhere in Article 1, Section 8 which gives the Congress taxing authority and expenditure authority for non-essential services. Let me repeat that. Non-essential services of the federal government are prohibited by Article 1, Section 8, prohibited from being funded by taxpayer dollars. Which is why I played that clip. Yes, shut it down, because the non-essential services are not constitutional to begin with. There is no basis whatsoever in the U.S. Constitution, which is our governing document. There is no basis for any of the non-essential services that we come to define now as somehow the proper role of our federal government. All of these non-essential services that are shut down every weekend and that would be shut down if a debt ceiling deal isn't reached. Every last one of them is unconstitutional. Every last one of them has no role. The federal government is given no role in carrying out these services at the federal level. And yet, that argument is never made, is it? It wasn't made last summer by Boner or Cantor or McCarthy or any of the House leadership. The simple argument was not even brought forth. Hey, wait a minute. If the non-essential services are going to be shut down, if the federal government defines these services as non-essential, then why do we have them? Why do we continue to fund them? Why do we run around like Chicken Freaking Little saying, oh my God, the world is going to end if we don't fund these non-essential services? It's ludicrous that no one brings up this argument. It's ludicrous that no one points out the federal government itself calls 40% of its services non-essential. But no one points it out. Why? Well, I think Barney Frank, of all people, sums it up perfectly.
I'm pretty good with words, but I'm not so good with things. I have had a lifelong struggle with things.
Yes, and the House leadership, and I use the term leadership very loosely in this instance, the House leadership, the current GOP leadership in the House of Reprehensibles, has a major problem with things. They have a major problem with concepts as simple as this. The government of the United States calls 40% of what it does non-essential. So let's eliminate it completely. Lock, stock, and barrel. Everything that is deemed by the federal government as non-essential, cut it out today and send those services back to the states or localities where they freaking belong. But again, they have a problem with things. They have a problem with concepts. They have a problem with laying out these very simple ideas. Why? Well, because they'll be seen as lacking compassion or obstructionist. Again, more of this twisting around of the language that the progressives have perfected over the last 120 years in this country. It is high time that we had some people inside of that godforsaken swamp we call our nation's capital in the 495 Beltway, or inside of the 495 Beltway. It is high time we had people there that had not even the courage. It doesn't take courage. It takes identifying these simple concepts and bringing them out and articulating them. The founders had no problem doing so in this little, 30-page document? 34 pages, including all 27 amendments. That's how big the Constitution is. And these are small pages. My little pocket Constitution here. Very small pages. And there are 34 of them. Or 33 and a half, actually. And there are a bunch of footnotes in here as well, so it's not even that big. The founders and framers had no problem laying out every last detail of what the federal government was supposed to entail. legislative, executive, and judicial,